Why do we buy a new or different motorcycle to replace our existing perfectly good motorcycle? Or why do we even start thinking about it in the first place? I'd like to start off by saying that in recent years I've definitely been guilty of participating in buying and replacing very good motorcycles every few years. I realized that this had more to do with me than for any reason associated with the bikes. As we delve into this topic, I would like to remind you to please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. So first, what is the Hedonic treadmill, if you notice the title in the thumbnail? It is a psychological term for having to seek out new ways to satisfy the urges for a given feeling. Another term for this is hedonic adaptation. According to this concept, we are usually chasing feelings of pleasure or happiness. It's like the old idea of keeping up with the Joneses, except you're trying to please yourself and not merely trying to impress others. So you might buy a new motorcycle which makes you happy, only to discover that over time you're thinking that this old motorcycle just doesn't make you as happy as it once did. And maybe a newer, same model, newer features, or just a different used motorcycle would do the trick. It's easy to fall into this thinking. In much of the world, including of course the West, we are encouraged to be part of a mass consumer culture. A culture where wanting the latest and greatest of a given object is common. A culture where slight differences in the style or function of a given product produced by competing companies could lead to one product being highly desirable and the other not so much. This type of thinking can be ingrained in us from an early age. I remember when I was a kid, my mom was shopping for back to school clothes. Back then, every kid wanted Levi Jeans. My mom was on a tight budget and bought us the much cheaper but fully adequate Maverick jeans. I wasn't too happy about it at the time, as I knew I'd get a lot of grief at school for not having Levi jeans. This of course was silly. Motorcycle manufacturers naturally try to take advantage of our tendency to engage in the hedonic treadmill. For example, when the Harley Davidson Street Glide Special came out with the M8 engine in 2017, the engine had a 107 cubic inch displacement. Since 2019, this bike has a 114 cubic inch displacement. In that time period, they also made some improvements to the infotainment interface and display. Were these differences enough to entice someone who had a 2017 Street Glide Special to trade it in for a 2019 or 2020 Street Glide Special? I'm sure Harley was hoping it did, which was probably the case for some people. Now please know that I'm not being critical of anyone who wants to buy a motorcycle or trade their existing bike in for another motorcycle, or just keep the old bike and get another one, additional bike, with different looks or features. It's your money, it's your business, and certainly I've done a lot of this myself in the past. My purpose here is to explore the phenomenon that I have observed in myself for just about always thinking about buying a different bike, even when my existing bikes are great. I realized that my near constant desire to change or add bikes in the near future was fueled by my appreciation for these relatively small changes in bike appearance or functionality. Then I realized I could still appreciate these differences without having to actually own that other bike. This hedonic treadmill can even apply to old bikes. One of my favorite bikes of all time was a 1993 Yamaha GTS 1000 that I bought new in 1992. That bike had a lot of power, handled great, was super high tech, and was very expensive. I spent $13,000 in 1992 for that bike, which is equivalent to over $23,000 today. I rode that bike extensively for many years and sold it when I started my family. Fast forward to a few years ago and I had a chance to buy the same year and model of bike. These bikes were very uncommon, as only a couple of hundred of them were sold for model years 1993 and 1994 in the US. After riding my newly acquired old bike, I quickly realized that my old memories of all the fun I had on this one-time high-performance bike did not match the current reality. By modern standards, the bike was rather slow, having 100 horsepower for a bike that weighed about 630 pounds. Also, the brakes were not nearly as effective as modern brakes on modern motorcycles. To top it all off, most dealers would not service the bike, and replacement parts were pretty much non-existent. Once I realized this, it definitely dampened my enthusiasm for the bike, and I got rid of it and had to admit that I had acquired the bike out of a sense of nostalgia and for trying to relive those feelings of high performance, which were only legitimate for the few years after I bought the bike back in the day. So from then on, I decided to start focusing on what I appreciated about my existing bike and worry less what I might be missing out if I did not acquire the new bike. After all, I had reached the state of contentment with some old shoes that were really nasty looking from wearing them when I did shop work, but I just couldn't bear to throw them out. They were just too familiar and comfortable to throw out. I had the same situation with an old Ford pickup truck that I loved that was kind of ratty and reeked of cigar smoke. I only got rid of that truck when I couldn't bring my firstborn son along in his car seat because it interfered with the stick shift. So for me, the idea is to find happiness with my purchase decisions, and when that happiness eventually turns to mere contentment, to not let that contentment turn unnecessarily to discontent. Having said all that, I enjoy my existing bikes. I'm lucky to have them. My 2019 Street Glide Special and my 2005 Yamaha 600R, or Copart Special as I like to call it, the bike that I'm riding here, and riding my son's 1982 Yamaha Virago. I also noticed that I have about as much fun on these old bikes that cost 1/10 as much as my Street Glide Special cost. But I have to admit that I'm finding that old familiar itch creep back for getting a new ride like the 2021 MT-09 coming out this spring, or the new Harley Pan America coming out this spring as well. So what do you think about this idea? Do you catch yourself wanting to trade bikes for very little objective justification? It's easy to do, as motorcycles are about as much about emotion and passion as any of their technical or practical aspects. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments section, and please like and subscribe. Thanks very much.